Restaurant owner steals the waitress's tip. Shut up or you're out on the street, you filthy pig. The dining room was packed when Blake's hand, the restaurant owner, reached over the plate and snatched the bills a customer had left for Avery. Leave my tip alone. It was left for me, and you know it, Avery said, steady-voiced, grabbing Blake's forearm before the bills disappeared into his pocket. You're challenging me in front of customers, is that it? Blake asked, eyes narrowed. You're the one stealing what isn't yours in front of everyone, Avery shot back, anger held tight as she gestured toward the watching tables. These people are here to eat, not to listen to an insolent employee, Blake growled. Give me my money back now. I earned every cent, Avery said, staring at him without blinking. You should be grateful you still have a job, you ungrateful thing. Blake sneered, leaning in like size alone could crush her courage. I'm not your maid. Show some respect and give back what's mine, Avery said, lifting her chin and trying to pull the bills from his hand. Shut up or you're out on the street, you filthy girl, Blake spat, crushing the crumpled bills in his fingers. The room froze. The bartender pretended to rearrange glasses without meeting anyone's eye. The air turned thick with shame. Get back out there and cut the drama, or this gets worse for you, said Lucy, the restaurant manager, appearing in the kitchen doorway with an icy stare. Last warning, girl. Move, Blake snarled, pointing toward the hallway. I'll get back to the floor, but I won't forget what you did, Avery said through a tight throat, slowly releasing his arm. At the end of her shift, Avery cleared silverware with trembling fingers, overheard a smothered laugh from a table, carried the weight of silence, and when the clock finally hit quitting time, she cut through the kitchen and shoved open the back door like she needed air. Avery, called Chase, the customer who had left the tip, stepping out from the shadow of the wall like he didn't want to startle her. He quickly opened his hand and discreetly pressed a few bills into hers, along with a slip of paper. I saw everything in there. Here's another tip to make up for what they stole from you. And if you need help, my number's on that paper, Chase said, voice low but firm. Thanks, but I can't promise anything, Avery replied carefully, clipping the paper to the edge of her apron. You don't have to promise. Just remember there's someone who can help, Chase said, taking a step back so he wouldn't pressure her. Dawn came with a bitter fatigue, and the next day started without warning. When Avery reached the shift board, her name had been shoved into the heaviest slots like it had been stamped there on purpose. Like your new schedule, it'll give you time to think before you run your mouth again, Blake taunted, tapping the stained board with his finger. This is punishment because I asked for my tip? Avery asked, breath short. Punishment is when I fire you. This is just education, Blake said, wearing a half-smile that begged for a fight. In the narrow hallway between boxes of supplies, Lucy appeared like she'd been waiting for this. Nobody challenges the boss here and walks away free, Lucy whispered, yanking Avery's arm and pinching low where the dining room camera couldn't see. I'm going to find another job. I won't live like this, Avery said with what breath she had, trying to pull free without making a scene. Go look. No owner's gonna hire a troublemaker the boss has already marked. Lucy laughed, twisting Avery's arm before dropping it like a sack of bread. The day dragged on in heavy trays and sideways glances, and near the end of the shift, a big car with tinted windows rolled up to the back gate. New hires, with me. Today you're getting a ride to off-site training, announced Mitchell, the restaurant security guard, as he opened the car door. Do we hand over our phones for this? Asked Amy, one of Avery's co-workers, holding her phone with hesitant fingers. Yep, phone in, get in. It's quick and everyone comes back better, Mitchell said, taking the phone and gesturing impatiently. Avery watched Amy climb in. The door slammed shut. She stood there waiting for some signal, but nothing happened. The engine turned over and the car pulled away, leaving only the empty street behind. You know where he takes them? Avery asked the cook smoking outside. Lady, I don't know anything. I just do my job, the cook said, flicking the butt and going inside without looking at her. Night swallowed the yard. The shift ended, and Amy didn't return. Avery slept poorly, tossing, sick with worry about where her co-worker was and what they'd done to her. The next morning at the restaurant, Amy reappeared behind the counter with swollen eyes, a trapped voice, and faint marks on her wrist hidden under her sleeve. "What happened to you?" Avery asked gently, brushing Amy's elbow. "It's work stuff. It'll pass." "Nothing complicated," Amy murmured, avoiding eye contact. "You didn't come back last night. I waited for you by the back door," Avery said, heart racing, reaching for any crack to get through. "Just drop it, please." "It's better for everyone," Amy said, clenching her lips to keep them from shaking. Avery worked with a knot in her stomach until the last table was done. Late that afternoon, she called Chase's number and set up a meeting. "I had to see you because something serious is going on," Avery said when she met Chase at the park they'd agreed on. "What did they do now?" Chase asked, stepping closer. "Mitchell, the restaurant's security guard, took Amy, my co-worker, to some off-site training. But she didn't come back at the end of the shift, and today she showed up silent, with swollen eyes and marks on her wrist," Avery blurted, gripping her phone like it might fall. "A few weeks ago, Blake invited me to a private tasting outside the restaurant. I turned it down because it felt off, but now this sets off alarms," Chase said, staring at the ground like he was connecting dots. "If you really want to help, we can wait by the back exit tomorrow and follow them from a distance," Avery suggested urgently. "That's a good plan. We'll do it, and we won't draw attention," Chase said, mapping out the route in his head. The next night, they parked on a side street with the car lights off and the window lowered just enough for a clear view. "If he leaves, we give it a minute, then trail him," Chase said, watching the rear view. The restaurant's back gate creaked. Mitchell appeared, same unbothered calm, and Amy climbed into the tinted car without lifting her head. "Now," Chase whispered, turning the ignition without headlights and keeping his distance. After a few detours, Mitchell's car stopped in front of a building with a dead facade, a metal door with no sign, a high window with no light, and a crooked street number on the wall. "Burn this place into your memory," Chase said, not taking out his phone to avoid any glow. Mitchell got out, opened the thick door with 2 keys, and from inside, Lucy's silhouette appeared to undo the second lock, like one key wasn't enough for what they wanted to hide. "You saw that second lock from the inside, right?" Avery asked, voice shaking. "I saw it. This isn't any kind of training. We just watch for now," Chase said, trying to swallow his anger. They stayed silent until the lock shut again. The quiet outside felt heavier than a slamming door. "That stolen tip was the loose thread that leads from the dining room straight to this place," Avery said, cold realization running through her as she stared at the metal door. "We're leaving slowly, and tomorrow you act like nothing happened," Chase said, easing off the parking brake. The next morning, the restaurant smelled the same, but to Avery, everything felt out of place. She waited for Amy in the service corridor where the noise muffled conversations. "Tell me what that place is, because I followed you and I saw where they took you," Avery said firmly, blocking the path. "Nobody told you to follow me. I already said it's work stuff. Please, stay out of it," Amy said, eyes down, voice tight. "I saw the metal door. I saw the locks. I saw you go in," Avery pressed, voice rising half a step. "Are you deaf? I told you to stay out of it," Amy snapped. "I'm trying to help you." "Something's wrong," Avery said, not backing down. "Nobody asked for your help, so stop sticking your nose where it doesn't belong," Amy fired back, dry as dust. Lucy appeared like she'd grown out of the wall, her shadow swallowing the corridor. "Curiosity comes with a price," she hissed, grabbing Avery by the hair at the nape and yanking her head back hard. "Get your hands off me," Avery said, throat tight, eyes burning with anger. "You're going to learn the hard way to stay in your lane," Lucy shot back, slamming Avery against the wall with a hard shoulder. Mitchell stood 2 paces away, arms crossed like a wall, watching without blinking. The wordless message was clear. From now on, the in and out ran through him. Avery walked to the locker room and stared at her phone for long seconds before typing to Chase. "We go again tonight," she wrote, her fingers shaking. The shift ended, and Avery slipped out through the back. Chase's car was already parked there, tucked in the shadows. Avery climbed in, and Chase pulled away without turning on the headlights. He drove slow to the same building where he'd followed Mitchell the night before, stopping far enough from the metal door to see without being seen. A few minutes later, Mitchell's car pulled curbside. He got out with the calm of a routine and opened the back door. "She's there again," Avery whispered, pointing with her chin as she watched Lucy tug Amy by the arm, head down toward the metal door. Avery lifted her phone, took a breath, and snapped a photo when Amy was fully in frame, seconds before the heavy door shut behind her and the locks slammed home. "Got it, clear enough to see her face," Avery said, voice trembling as she lowered the phone into her lap. "Now we wait for the exit," Chase said, pressing his forehead to the steering wheel for a moment. Hours crawled by. No cars passed, no dogs barked. Close to dawn, the door opened again. "She's coming out," Avery said, heart unclenching, watching Mitchell hand Amy her phone outside before locking the door again without a backward glance. "Now a shot of the exit," Chase said, lifting his phone discreetly and snapping the same employee, shoulders slumped, face drained. "Amy!" Avery called, pushing the passenger door open before her courage had time to run. "What do you want? I have to go. I can't talk," Amy said, trying to sidestep, taking short, stumbling steps that tripped over their own hurry. "Get in. 5 minutes and you're gone," Chase urged, opening the back door. Amy sank into the back seat, body limp, hands trembling on her bag. Her eyes filled to the brim, but she tried to hold it back. "Amy, look at me." "What are they doing to you in there?" Avery asked, voice breaking as she turned in her seat. "It's nothing. Leave me alone. Please," Amy said, facing the window, voice trapped. "Nothing. I watched you go into that building and come out like this," Avery said, pointing at her face. "I told you, it's work stuff. You don't get it," Amy said, hugging her bag to her chest. "Then help us get it," Chase said gently, twisting in his seat a little. "You can't get involved." "It gets worse for everyone," Amy said, shaking her head, voice failing. "You're scared. I can see it. Tell me, what happens in there?" Avery pressed, firmer now. "I can't," Amy said, the word barely leaving her lips. "You need to, Amy. No one's going to hurt you here, I promise," Chase said, keeping his tone even. She took a deep breath, jaw clenched, tears finally spilling. Then her voice came out in a way no one expected. "It's not training at all!" Amy burst out, shattering the quiet. "It's a locked room where some customers pay for special attention," Amy said, hand covering her face. "What do you mean, special attention?" Avery asked, throat tight. "Lucy hands out different outfits, tells us to smile, to dance, to do whatever they want. And if anyone hesitates, Mitchell stands behind you just watching, but it's enough to shut you up," Amy said, voice cracked in two. "And who's cashing in? Who collects?" Avery asked, rage burning hot up her neck. "At the end, Blake shows up to take the money like it's just another tab. He doesn't even look at us, only at what's on the table," Amy said, closing her eyes like she could erase the memory. "And afterwards? How do they keep you trapped?" Chase asked, keeping his voice low so it wouldn't blow. "Lucy makes each of us read on camera that we took part of our own free will, and we have to sign. If anyone hesitates, she shoves the camera in your face and makes you repeat it," Amy said, trembling with shame and fear. "And the phones?" Avery asked, clutching her hand tighter. "Mitchell gives them back at the end, but says he's already copied everything. If anyone talks, the videos go to our families and to people who run that circuit," Amy said, a sob slicing her words. "You won't be alone in this. I promise," Avery said, chest on fire, eyes locked on Chase. Tonight we've got 2 photos, clean going in, destroyed coming out. Tomorrow we get something no one can deny, Chase said, weighing every syllable. The next morning, the decision was made. Avery got through her shift, laser-focused, and during a lull, slipped into the office where her friend at the register was punching numbers into the keyboard. "I need you right now. It's too important," Avery said to Natalie, the cashier. "You're pale. What happened?" Natalie asked, closing the drawer. "I need Mitchell's employee file, the security guard, full address and emergency contact," Avery said, voice steely, feeling the corridor's breath at her back. "If they catch me, I'm fired," Natalie murmured, glancing up at the cameras before pulling open the drawer with personnel cards. "I wouldn't ask if it weren't critical," Avery said, fingers grazing the desk edge to keep them from shaking. "Here. Write it fast and stash it," Natalie said, pointing at the card with Mitchell's address and family emergency number. "You just saved more people than you know," Avery said, eyes bright with gratitude as she hid the note like they'd planned. "Be careful and call me if it goes south," Natalie said, pushing the drawer shut and typing like nothing had happened. Outside, Avery showed the paper to Chase and Amy, and the street seemed to point them forward. They synced their timing, took a breath, and kept moving. "It's now or never, we can't miss," Chase said, tapping the wheel to steady his hand. "I'm scared, but I'm going anyway," Amy said, adjusting her tied-back hair to hide the swelling around her eyes. That afternoon, the 3 of them stopped in front of Mitchell's house. After a knock, the door opened to Gabriella, Mitchell's wife, eyes wary. "Who are you?" Gabriella asked, hand on the knob. "We're here to show you what your husband's been doing behind everyone's back," Avery said firmly, pulling out her phone and bringing up the 2 photos from the night before. "What is this?" Gabriella asked, half pulling her body back inside. "Look at the first one, going in." "She's still okay," Chase said, showing Amy with her bag clutched to her chest and a clean face. "Now look at the exit, the same face, a different person," Avery added, revealing the second photo, makeup smeared, Amy's expression shattered. Gabriella stood frozen for a few seconds, trying to make sense of what she was seeing. "I don't understand. What does this mean?" she asked, voice low and trembling. Amy drew a breath, hands clasped like she needed strength to keep going. Then she began, voice broken, to lay out everything that happened inside and what each person did, including Blake, Lucy, and Mitchell himself. With every sentence, Gabriella's face shifted. Confusion, then shock, and finally a quiet kind of horror. "I suspected lies, but I never imagined something this awful," Gabriella whispered, paling. "This won't stand. All of you, come in." "If this is true, I'm calling Mitchell home right now," Gabriella said, opening the door and pointing to the living room. "Thank you for hearing us. We just want this to stop," Avery said honestly as they stepped inside. Gabriella gripped the phone with rigid fingers, dialed, and said little, just enough to summon Mitchell back. "He's on his way. This isn't going to be swept under the rug," Gabriella said, breathing through her mouth so she wouldn't fall apart. Minutes later, the door opened and Mitchell came in. The second he saw everyone, his gaze slipped, and for an instant he lost the control he liked to fake. "What are these people doing here?" Mitchell demanded, using that aggressive tone designed to scare first and understand later. "They came to show me this, and now you're going to explain what it means," Gabriella said, lifting the phone with the photos open. "What's it supposed to mean? They're just photos of an employee walking in and out of work. What kind of accusation is this?" Mitchell said, brow furrowed. "You know exactly what it means, Mitchell. You took her there," Avery said, unwavering. "Don't make up stories. I took her because the manager told me to, period," Mitchell snapped, voice rising. "Lucy did send us, but you stayed inside, guarding the door while they did whatever they wanted," Amy said, drawing a steadying breath. "What are you even talking about?" Mitchell asked, forcing a nervous laugh. "You know perfectly well," Amy said, voice quivering but moving forward. You and Lucy made it all happen, Avery added, not blinking. Lies! All of it lies! Mitchell shouted, slamming his fist into the wall. Tell the truth, Mitchell. These people don't look like they're lying. Are you? Gabriella asked, her voice shaking. They're nobodies trying to destroy me, Mitchell yelled, stepping forward and jabbing a finger in their direction. Put that hand down, now, Gabriella shot back without backing away, face wet with anger. You're going to disrespect me in front of strangers? Mitchell bellowed, face red, trying to dominate the room with volume. You ruined a lot of lives and wrecked our family, Gabriella said, voice breaking but firm. Mitchell had no answer. His eyes darted around the room, searching for an exit that wasn't there. Just then, the school van stopped in front of the house. The door opened and Mitchell's son ran in with his backpack, halting in the middle of the room, confused. Go to your room for a minute, honey. Mommy will be right there, Gabriella said, trying to keep her voice gentle even through the crack. The child obeyed and disappeared down the hall. The silence turned heavy. If you care one bit about this family, turn yourself in and tell the whole truth. Our son doesn't deserve to grow up with a monster, Gabriella said, crying openly. Mitchell stood still, face tight, breath short. Fine, I'll turn myself in, Mitchell said, voice low and eyes empty, defeated more by his wife's gaze than by the proof. Then we're going to the station right now, Gabriella said, grabbing her keys. At the police station, Mitchell drew a breath and started talking like he had stones in his mouth. He laid everything out in detail. Amy showed the marks on her wrist. Chase turned over the photos. Avery described what she'd lived through at the restaurant, every shift, every humiliation. The clerk just kept writing while someone in the back was already calling for backup. A report was filed and the investigation began. A few days later, the block woke up to sirens, slamming doors, and neighbors peeking through curtains. Squad cars surrounded the restaurant while it was still open. Avery didn't flinch. Blake was led out of the dining room in cuffs, his face caught between rage and disbelief, while the waitresses watched in silence until the first shout turned into boos. Lucy tried to slip out the back, but an officer stopped her before she reached the alley. The murmur rose and broke into applause as the squad cars pulled away. In the days that followed, statements piled up. Mitchell confirmed everything in front of the judge, word for word, without asking for forgiveness. He left court for an empty house, abandoned by Gabriella and their son. Amy faced the hearing with her head high. Chase described every tale, every photo. The case closed with no room for doubt. Other employees from the restaurant and from the hidden building came forward, one by one. Some cried, others simply nodded as they confirmed what they'd lived through on the nights they disappeared for training. The stories repeated with different details, but the pattern was the same. Enforced silence, fear, and exploitation. Every name added weight to the case, and the list grew until it filled pages. The restaurant was shut down. The clandestine building condemned, and Blake's name started appearing in headlines beside charges he could no longer deny. By court order, all his assets were auctioned. The money was used to compensate every worker who'd been exploited, both those at the restaurant and those carted off to the hidden building. It didn't make them whole, but it was enough to restart with dignity. When Avery left the precinct after signing the last document, Chase was waiting on the sidewalk. No speeches, just presence. She took a deep breath and walked beside him. The humiliation that began with a stolen tip ended there, with justice done and for the first time without fear. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to subscribe to the channel, leave a comment, give it a like, and activate the notification bell so you don't miss any of our upcoming videos. See you in the next story.